Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Trash Talk. This is the show where me, your host, DJ Wooldridge, talks trash with an amazing guest. And I have a wonderful guest, friend of the show, friend of mine. Johnny, say hi to the kids at home.
What's up, everyone? Thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure.
Love having you on. For people that aren't familiar, we've had you on several times on the Patreon show, Spider-Versity, patreon.com/OnlyStupidAnswers.
Right.
And I believe be past the paywall. Maybe the last time I had you on a show was when we talked about the live action Avatar.
Yes, that was it. We talked about live action Avatar. And I think prior to that, we maybe did the Lightyear movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Wow. Which is one of those things, thanks to the pandemic. I blame the pandemic for this. It's like that was either last year or a million years ago, whenever that,
Yes.
whenever
Time
that movie came out. Anyway, but today we're going to be talking about, I'm going to call it adult animation. I don't know if that's the appropriate way, but cartoons, animated shows, specifically designed for an older audience. That's what we're going to be talking about today, because we've had, I would argue, a little bit of a renaissance in that. But before we get into it, Johnny, tell the kids at home who you are and what you do.
My name is Johnny Two Cellos on the internet. I have a YouTube channel where I primarily talk about adult animation. Would you believe it? Good fit.
Yeah.
I talk about some other stuff on there too, but I do sort of video essay, thematic character analysis type deep dives and episode breakdowns, sometimes for new stuff, sometimes for stuff that's been out for years. And I actually just recently started this new project called Johnny Too Casual. It's another channel where I do face cam, straight to camera, sort of more immediate reaction, off the cuff news discussion type stuff. And that's been a lot of fun to exercise a little bit of a different muscle.
Can I applaud you for your branding prowess? Because Johnny Too Casual, that's good. Was that all you, or did you like workshop it with people? You're like, okay, well, here are some of my ideas that I'm thinking.
So I came up with it, but it was funny because I actually started experimenting with this channel last year in a different format. I wasn't doing face cam. I was trying to do the same sort of off the cuff, rambly, like reaction stuff. But I was just putting B-roll of like some of my old videos that mildly matched. And I had a little PNG YouTuber character. And that last year I called the channel Johnny New Cellos. And the idea was, I'm trying to do more newsy coverage, new cellos, it rhymes. Yeah. And then like, as I was prepping the revamp of the channel, I don't know what it was that I was watching that made that click into my head, Johnny Too Casual. I was like, oh, that's it. I'm rebranding. Like we're rebranding the
it's tricky. The kids at home might not know. It can be tricky to decide what part of the name you're going to pivot off of.
Right.
For example, I know when made me think of when Spider-Man Homecoming came out. I'm like, perfect title. That's great. And then for the sequels, you can do other school-related, graduation day,
other
field
dances.
trip, whatever. Yeah, other dances. And Kevin Feige was like, no, it's home. The home is the part where the word home. I'm like, all right, well, you know, we
the
can
new
disagree,
trilogy
I guess.
is going to just brand off of the word brand.
Brand. You're like, not new? Yeah. You're not going to do brand? All right. Well, brand Spider-Man brand recognition. You got it. You nailed it. Well, I'm very thankful talking about the adult animation, getting to talk with you about this, especially since I don't get to talk about it a lot on the other shows that I do. And so this is a good opportunity to talk about stuff. But I do want to take a second for people. How did you get to be the guy that talks about adult animation? What was kind of your journey to where you are now?
You know, it's funny. I wanted to write cartoons for a while, but, you know, I did film school in Chicago. I moved out to LA and I was working I was just kind of a hired gun producer on a lot of unscripted stuff. I started as a PA at Gurney Productions, which was the terrible reality production company that made like Duck Dynasty, which was a pretty rough job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not my favorite. But I was moving up in that world. And weirdly, one of the show that was my big break was I worked as a PA and was promoted to an associate producer on a short-lived, like unscripted TV series starring the Epic Mealtime guys.
I worked with those
called
guys.
Epic. Yeah, they're fun. It was called Epic Meal Empire.
Yeah. Yep. I'm familiar. Yep.
Yeah, and it was a really fun job, honestly. I loved the job. My boss liked me and, moved me up and like kind of gave me a vote of confidence in my producing abilities, which was really cool. But that immediately that was kind of the first thing that got me like really thinking about YouTube as a like platform. And I think that's just kind of planted the seeds. But I never really grew up on YouTube. I'm older than like I'm too old to have grown up on it. When it came out, it was like, oh, everyone's sharing clips of things, and that was kind of it.
Yeah.
And I worked a few more jobs with some of these same people. I worked on a show called The Comment Section at E, which was a soup partner show starring Michael Costa, who's now a correspondent on The Daily Show, and it was just diving into comment sections and like highlighting some of the craziest things people say, which was fun. But that's where I met a guy named Derek Paller, who eventually hired me at Nerdist. And that I had started before I went to Nerdist. I had started my YouTube channel as kind of in my head a means to be like, well, I want to write cartoons, but it's kind of it's a hard, I don't have any connections in there. So what if I write about cartoons and showcase, my understanding of the themes and characters and stories that are being told? And so I started that. Then I worked at Nerdist, and I really was able to like hone my digital content creating skills at Nerdist. I worked on a handful of shows there. That's where I met Hector, who introduced you and I.
Yep.
And Hector was the host of a couple of my shows, including one that I pitched that's more or less the like precursor to what my channel kind of became, which was a show called Animation Investigation at Nerdist. And so I would write those and edit those, and Hector was my host, and we had a ton of fun doing it. And then eventually I kind of just leaned fully into the YouTube thing, and it like took off in a way, particularly over the pandemic, it took off in a way that made it so that I could kind of make it my full-time thing. And that's been the full-time thing since then.
That's, God bless reality TV. I'm pretty critical of reality TV generally, but you saying that reminded me, because my break, and by break, I mean I was able to pay rent and stay out here, I was doing casting editing at a reality house. And so I'm pretty critical of reality TV generally. I think you can make a relatively strong argument that it is directly involved in the destruction of our country right now. But it's a good way to break in, make some money. Because I still think that casting, I'm not even editing reality TV. I'm editing the casting videos for reality TV.
Right.
I still think that's the best money I've ever made in this town.
Right. And it's also, it is a good, like, there's so much of it, and so like it's a good place to kind of hone some skills. You might get to do things that bigger productions wouldn't let you do, we hire people big bucks for this. Yeah.
Because especially since they played a little bit, for better or worse, they played a little bit, or at least my experience, played it a little bit more fast and loose with certain things. So you're like, sure, get in here, do this thing. So yeah, you know what? Yeah, sorry, reality TV. I've been too hard on you. Thank you for giving us all
bad product. Fine. It's a good place to learn, though.
I guess it's like the fast food of media. It's like, you start off as a fry cook and then you work your way up. Very cool. Very cool. I'm glad. It's interesting too. Similar to you, when I really didn't. Like, you see like trailers and stuff on YouTube. Everybody uses YouTube. That's why it's kind of the colloquial, like it's Kleenex. It's like it's the thing. But I didn't understand the culture around it until I was working at SourceFed. And then you'd get people like interns come in, and you realize that like most of the people I was working with had come out to Hollywood to do other things, and this is where they were landed. And then you get interns that come in that like, this is what they want, this is what they're aspiring for.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's totally wild. That's an interesting, I guess, just a cultural age disparity, what you're ingesting. And I don't know about you, I've been seeing a lot of stuff recently of like, to paraphrase, it's like, is YouTube replacing the way we used to produce movies and shows? Is this the new thing? I'm like, I don't know about all that. I don't know about, especially since every place I've worked at that had like real production value and like offices and stuff, they had to shut down because it's not the same business model.
They always try to scale up. They always try they get some overarching company that comes in, buys them out, and is like, well, we need to make our investment back, so we're going to make 3 times as much content. And then people just aren't the audience just isn't there for that much.
Yeah.
And yeah. And they're like, well, I can get really specified content to whatever I specifically want all over YouTube. So why would I only go to this one place for all this content?
Yep.
And then they shut down, and then they fire most of their people. And
it's so cool. It's such a cool, what a healthy work environment we live in. Anyway, all right, enough of that. Enough of that behind the scenes talk. Is there something, before we get into our main conversation about the current state of the union of adult animation, is there something currently that you're watching, reading, enjoying?
Well, yesterday they dropped the poster for the new King of the Hill revival, and
that's happening. That's right.
It's happening, and I've been rewatching the original in preparation. It's a show that I'm really intimately familiar with and love a lot. But I've been meaning to do like a rewatch leading in. And so I'm in the middle of season 2 now. And I just like every time I rewatch that show, I'm reminded of how much I adore it. I think I like it more every time I start. But I'm pretty excited for the revival. Some storyboards leaked recently. There was like a lot of stuff coming out that was kind of unexpected. And there's like 3 scenes that leaked in storyboards, and they're really funny, and they really feel like the show has like naturally evolved. And so like it really instilled a lot of confidence in me in what I'm hoping will be a good revival. I know it's a like spotty track record in general for reboots and revivals, but I'm really excited about this one. So I've been in full King of the Hill mode. I made like a quick poster breakdown video yesterday, just like going over all the details. So in animation world, I've been talking about that.
Yeah.
I've also been reading, I don't know if you've been reading it. I just started reading through the new Ultimate Spider-Man. Have you caught up on that?
That is the one. So the 2 Ultimate books I've been picking up are Spider-Man and Wolverine.
Okay, I think I'm gonna try the rest of them because I love Ultimate Spider-Man so much. I'm like, well, it's early enough. I can just jump in. So
it's good. Yeah, so right now both Marvel and DC are in this phase of Marvel's bringing back the Ultimate brand, with Jonathan Hickman spearheading that, and then DC is doing their Absolute books, which are kind of doing what Ultimate did about 20 years ago.
Right.
And while I like a lot of the Absolute books, they do feel like 20 years too late. But the one of all the ones I'm picking up, and some of them I really enjoy, but the one that feels like it gets the assignment the most is Ultimate Spider-Man, where it feels more like it is engaging with the world we actually live in, as opposed to trying to like recapture something. And I'm a big fan of my one note on Ultimate Spider-Man is that for people that aren't reading it, kids at home that aren't reading it, Ultimate Spider-Man is following, instead of Peter Parker getting his powers as a teenager, he gets them as an adult after he already has a family with Mary Jane. That's the short version of it. My only critique is this should just be mainline Spider-Man. He should be an adult with a family. Like Miles should be Ultimate Spider-Man off in his own little universe where he is Spider-Man. Sure. And then adult Peter should just be an adult with a family and kids, because it works. Like Jonathan Hickman's like, see, it works.
It does work. And like I love the dynamic of Peter and his family and him being Spider-Man. And I do think the conceit of this universe where like, heroes didn't exist and they're like now re-origining all of these heroes is pretty cool. Yes. But it does mostly just highlight that like, Peter Parker works really well aged up like this. And it sucks that the Amazing line is just too scared to change the status quo in any significant way.
Well, and it's kind of ridiculous too. Sorry, gang. I know this isn't the Spider-Man show I do, but you're welcome. It's kind of ridiculous too, in that Miles exists. If you want to tell young Spider-Man stories,
totally.
Miles exists. You know what I mean? So it allows a perfect and miraculously, Miles is popular. It can be tricky to introduce a new guy and have them be popular, but Miles exists. Miles is popular. Miles allows an opportunity. I think we've proven time and again between the Spider-Verse movies and the Miles Morales game, we can tell functionally remixes of young Spider-Man stories with Miles, and it'll really work. And so that allows you, let Peter be older, let Miles be younger. Why are you making it so hard on yourselves?
I know. I'm in this. I completely agree. But I am at least grateful that this run is so fun. And also, even despite wanting that for the mainline universe, there are aspects of this universe that I do find really fun. Like I love the Ben and Jameson investigative journalist team up. It's such a great aspect of this.
You are, that you can't undersell that. You're right, that is really cool, like that dynamic specifically. I also like where they position Mary Jane. I like the way they position. Where are you at?
I'm up through 12, so there's I have
so you're pretty close.
I'm pretty close.
I like where they position Gwen Stacy. Truthfully, I also think this is good for Jonathan Hickman. This is a good, having him tell a relatively more grounded story, I think helps rein in some of the stuff in his writing that doesn't click with me. Having it be more personal allows me to connect to the characters more, and it helps that it's Spider-Man.
Totally.
I would, if you pick up the other ones, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. The other one that I've been picking up Ultimate Wolverine because I think that's another one that has Logan and it's true to that character, but the context, putting him in this different context, is really interesting, and also his costumes bitchin'. The cool. Ultimate Wolverine costume's real cool. I think make that Marvel Legends toy. That's awesome. I'm glad you're reading that. I think I'm an issue or two behind. I was caught up on the Unlimited app, and then I actually just grabbed it for a pull list at my local comic book shop. But I'm still there's still a couple issues in between what I have bought and what I need to read. So I'm waiting for those to hit Unlimited, and then I'll catch up. I want to circle back to the King of the Hill reboot. Sure. Because I know Futurama just got its reboot. I just looked it up. I did not watch King of the Hill. So I just looked it up. It had 13 seasons prior to this. It ran a long time. And good news for you, it looks like, because I clicked the last season, it looks like it's already been greenlit for 2 seasons already. Yeah, it sounds like they're basically almost done animating season 2 already. Like they've been real ahead of it. And I guess they're waiting to announce if they're going to renew it until this airs, but I get the sense that they'll at least pick it up for another 20 episodes. Hulu tends to do these 20 episode orders, and then they split them into 2 seasons. Yeah. So, and you're feeling, because I always worry with these reboots of my initial instinct is always just let it. You had a good thing, let it go. But I think you'd be more. I feel like the Futurama refresh is well received. I would say it's middlingly received. I think there's a lot of fans who like it. I think the thing about Futurama is that it's been canceled and revived so many times. And I personally do feel like each time it's come back, it's just been a little bit worse. And I'm not at the point where I'm mad it's back, because there have been a couple new episodes in this run that I really love. And also it just coming out while I'm in my animation content creation world has been really fun, as just a long time fan of that show and someone who was obsessed with it in high school, getting to talk about it week to week and speculate with my long running love for it has been really fun on my end. I do think that it's I don't know if it's 100% justified its existence yet. It's really fun. I'm liking it. There's some pretty rough ones. They tend to have some of the rougher modern day references that feel we're really jumping on this trend. We're really going to make a Futurama episode about Bitcoin, that kind of stuff. Yeah. About NFTs. And so it's don't worry, our 70-year-old writers are real hip on the Bitcoin right now. Right. Yeah. Right. It was by the time the NFT episode of Futurama hit, NFTs had already died in our world. Well, and, it's funny too, especially when you're making, stuff it is really tricky to do satire right now. And I had to be really cognizant. The good plug, dangerboycomic.com. If you go to dangerboycomic.com, click the pre-order store link, that'll take you to pre-order to my comic. If you missed the Kickstarter, you can still, for the window's going to be closing soon, but you can still, as of right now, pre-order the comic. Part of that comic is a satire, and things move so quickly. A new grift is introduced, thrives, and then dies within the matter of however long. I had to be like, to sit back and like, I had to revise some things where I was like, I need to make this more time. It can't be of this, especially since, not to get too in the weeds, but I originally started writing it while Biden was president. Sure. And so I was like, I need to make something that's more of a universal observation about the arc of the American experiment as opposed to this specific moment. And the good news is we keep making the same mistakes, so that works as a thesis too. My point being, satire is tricky, especially in the current climate, the current flood the zone era that we're in. But you feel good about King of the Hill. Mike Judge is going to come up again soon in this conversation.
I think here's why I feel good about King of the Hill as a revival. It's because that show was kind of always about Hank in particular being this sort of repressed, old-fashioned guy, struggling to come to terms with the way the world changes. Like that's kind of what the show is at its core already. And so like when you move that up into modern day and you got a little bit of an older Hank, so they're aging everyone up. That's the other big thing, is this is more of a sequel than it is a continuation.
Yeah. Was King, because I didn't watch it. So the original King of the Hill was similar to like Simpsons, where it's everybody's in the same age every season.
Yes.
So,
it's a sliding timeline where like in 1996, Bobby was 11 and in 2009 he was 13, but it was still 2009. But it's always kind of been about the world changing and Hank being confronted with things that he doesn't understand and doesn't want to understand. And, sometimes those things, old fashioned values prove better than the newfangled thing. But sometimes Hank will find some kind of underlying integrity within something he didn't understand. And so it's kind of always been about that changing world and someone grappling with it who is not particularly equipped to do so. Yeah. And so I feel like it will work. The only thing I'm worried about in modern day is more so the reaction, the fan reaction, because even if they make Hank find some integrity in a divisive idea, people are going to lose their shit. Like some of the fans who think Hank is like this bastion of conservative values are going to lose their shit if he finds some kind of integrity in something that they see as like the enemy or whatever. Yeah. So I'm not super stoked about the discourse, but I do get the sense that it's going to be a good show.
I think that's a really interesting observation and kind of connects to one of my, I hope the show's good for you. You know what I mean? I do again have those concerns about like, is this existing in the place of something new? And I think more to the point you just made, something I've been thinking about more, because we're entering, as of this recording, we're entering a summer where in the same month, we're getting a Superman movie and a Fantastic Four movie. Right. I've been pretty focal. One of those just had a trailer that dropped yesterday and I watched it 3 times and I got teary-eyed each time I watched it. One of them is like, yeah. And I told my wife about that and she's like, why? And I'm like, it's hard to explain. Not entirely sure, but and the other one is fine. It's like, that's fine. It's another Marvel movie. But it has me thinking about how one of the issues that both of them face is me as a fan of the source material have an expectation of what these movies could be or should be. Right. And to your point with King of the Hill, it sounds like that. I think that's a very valid concern to have going on about how people will react to it. And it's one of the things that I think with this IP saturated era, Star Wars has struggled with this the entirety of the Disney era of how do you navigate the fan expectation of what it is, and to the degree that, to my mind, this is actually lines up with our conversation. I don't know why we keep doing American live action adaptations of anime. The fans never like it. I don't think they ever make money. Stop. I think the one that has been seemingly well received, I'm a little removed from that world, but it feels like One Piece was relatively well received. Yes. Yeah. But like they're doing a My Hero Academia. I'm like, why? Everybody's going to hate it. Well, why are you just punching yourself in the dick? Just let it go.
Cowboy Bebop was loathed.
It's because it was bad. It was bad. And I think there's a way to do it, but it's just, I think it's a tricky in this IP era to navigate. Like, again, like we're just coming out of season 2 of Andor, which I think was fantastic. And I think Andor was fantastic. But part of me, with the way fans receive a lot of the Star Wars stuff, it's kind of like you want to go to Disney and be like, just stop. Just do something else. Just do something that doesn't have this sort of cash. We're doing they're doing a Harry Potter TV show. Don't do that. For a variety of reasons, that's a mistake. Don't do that.
A variety of reasons. But in particular, like, we're just going to do the same story we've already done in very beloved, iconic movies with characters and iconography that are inextricably tied to that franchise now. And you're going to change those. Like, how are you going to, I don't know how it's just a bad idea all around for
Yeah. And a similar thing every time we're like, okay, we're going to do a Lord of the Rings prequel. Why?
Yeah.
Like I understand the instinct, and I say this because Harry Potter, I think, is a similar thing, because the world alludes to this idea that there's a lot of stuff in every corner. But the truth is, it's kind of for this one story. Just do something else. Just do a new thing. So that way you can do whatever you want. And I guess it's riskier, but that's a good segue to doing something new, trying something new, because I think we're in a really, I feel like, as somebody that has wanted more. And when I say adult-oriented animation, and I think you and I can have a conversation around this, I think what people traditionally mean in Western culture is cartoons that say curse words, and you might see a titty, or there might be whatever. What I think we're getting a lot of recently, comparatively a lot of, that I think has been really rewarding is yes, the shows we're about to talk about have more mature elements. Actually, I don't know that Pantheon does. I don't know if there's any real cursing in Pantheon or like whatever. But
I don't remember either. There's a lot of action though.
But I don't think it's particularly violent. But the point being, it's adult in its content and the thoughts that it's having. Totally. And we're going to talk about several things. But I did mostly because, if I recall correctly, John and I were both very bummed when AMC Plus killed. Season 2 had been. Pantheon is a show that originally is an animated series that originally aired on AMC. I watched it on AMC Plus, and it. That, and there was another show, Moonhaven. There was a live action show that I also thought was really good. Both of them got unceremoniously killed for tax cuts because that's David Zaslav taught the industry you could just do that. You could just kill a show and make money doing that. And it was especially galling with Pantheon because season 2 was done. It was it was done and it was in the can. There was the end of the story. And I don't know if you know how this happened. I don't know how it happened. But somehow it ended up on season 1 ended up on Netflix, and then we got season 2.
Yeah.
And
it's funny because the reason I know we talked about it beforehand, and I did really want to rewatch the show before I came on because I watched season 2. Season 2 initially came out on like Amazon Prime New Zealand a couple years ago.
So when you said, yeah, it's been a while, and I'm like, well, I think it just dropped like a month ago.
It's actually been two years since I've watched it, basically. Whoa! So that's what I was. So like the show was out there, and I pirated it to watch it because I just couldn't help myself.
Yeah, now, I get it.
And this is, I think, speaks to how frustrating these industry trends are. Is like now I loved that show. And I meant to talk about it on my YouTube channel. I was like, I just said, once season 2 comes out in the US, I'll talk about it. And now it's been 2 years, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like behind. I completely fell off, and I didn't get any video about season 2 off, but I loved it when I watched it, but it also is now, it's so out of my brain because it was 2 years. It was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
Well, and I think you watched it at the right time too, because I thought it was excellent. I think Pantheon's on Netflix right now. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, I recommend watching both seasons. I think it's really thoughtful, and it does exactly what you want to do with a more mature sci-fi story, which is it uses every part of the animal. There's not the core. So for the audience members who haven't watched it, which is statistically most of you probably, the premise of the Pantheon revolves around, instead of AI, which is artificial intelligence, revolves around UI, which is uploaded intelligence, this idea of copying somebody's brain into a computer and then having the human brain, but also all the computer powers inside the machine. That's the core conceit of it. And in every permutation of what that could mean, it turns over that rock and looks at it and everything. And I really like that. But I think you watched at the right time because you watched it 2 years ago. So it's been 2 years.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half. It was like, because it was relatively quickly after season 1 got booted off AMC that it hit like Amazon Prime New Zealand or whatever, and Australia. And so I was able to pirate and watch it. But I presumed it would be coming out in the US much quicker.
Yeah, because I saw it, I think it was they dropped season 1 on Netflix, and I saved it because I hoped what that meant is that we would eventually get season 2
for sure,
and we did. I think a year later, but I think you watched it at the right time because you're talking about how trends move so quickly. I now, between seasons 1 and 2, we now live in a time that's not post Bitcoin, but like after the NFT boom and bust, and now we're in the AI boom and bust. It's not even AI; it's their large language models. We don't need to get into that here. But and I realized that kind of colored my perspective of what the show ended up talking about. And this again is not a critique of the show. To me, this is like pointing out that in the Matrix, like actually the human body would make an awful battery. That's not the point. Totally. That's not what we're talking about. It doesn't matter. That might be true, but they have lines like. So by the end of season 2, we have a whole culture, slight spoilers for season 2, we have a whole culture living as uploaded intelligences, and there's a conflict between them and the meat people. And one of the arguments that this character that's supposed to kind of like barter a piece, he's like, well, we use way less resources than you do. And I was sitting there going like, that's actually wouldn't be true. That would be because it's something that's a fraction of human intelligence is like sucking up reservoirs. And so it's like, it got me thinking about something, and we love this in sci-fi. We love this conceptually in sci-fi, where this idea of like, the human is great, but what if they had a robot skeleton? Or what if you put a human brain in the car, it'd have all the powers of a human and all the powers of a car? Wouldn't that be better? Somehow the idea of like putting a human in a product improves the human. And so in this case, it's like putting them in the machine. It's like, I actually don't think that I agree with that notion. I actually don't think that's true, because I think once you get into what it would take to, like, if you put us in a computer, our brain would be so much better. It's like, I actually think maybe the reason like we can't do math computations as fast as computers, because we have stuff like love and humor. Yes. And so like to compute both, you can't do both. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, that is interesting to think. Like that in the time that it took them to release season 2, things have changed so quickly and so drastically that that's going to color how you look at their sci-fi concepts. And it's just another reason they shouldn't be delaying these damn shows so long.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's something sci-fi writers need to start thinking about more. When, like, I just watched a movie called Pantheon that deals with like a robot girlfriend, basically.
Yeah. And
it's like, as people come to, man, this connects to a lot of things we're talking about, because it makes me think about Silicon Valley, which is a Mike Judge show. Mike Judge is King of the Hill. But this idea, the limitations of technology, and now that we have something in our lives that they've decided to brand AI. When I'm writing a sci-fi thing, I have to, this is another good example, going back to Danger Boy. I had at one point, it's like a cyberpunk retro futuristic thing, and I had one of my protagonists, the vehicle they're in, have a little AI companion, and I was working off the movie stuff, and I realized like, no, this isn't true to me anymore. Mm-hmm. These things aren't helpful. They're not useful in this way. That's not, you know what I mean? It doesn't, and now that it's a part of our lives, and I kind of have a better understanding of like, but it's not like this though. It's actually not like this is a fantasy part of it. Interesting. 2 years ago, did you like it then?
I did. I remember liking it. Honestly, I owe the whole show a rewatch because it's been so long at this point.
Yeah.
But I remember really enjoying it. I remember enjoying how they escalated that. And, you know,
the society
escalated. Yes, they really escalated. Almost to the point where it felt like there maybe should have been a third season where they like explored them a little more spread out.
I like that. I'm like, oh, we're going real big for the final offer. Yeah.
Totally. Yes, I remember really loving it. And just in general, that show was such a breath of fresh air. I mean, for one, like you mentioned, just exploring themes and ideas that are more mature and adult, and not necessarily being like, oh, it's all swears and nudity and violence. Yeah. It's like, it's just adult ideas that like, oh, kids aren't going to connect to this stuff as well, because
Yeah.
It's heavy stuff to think about. It's like existential stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, and it being an hour long, really cool, creative, well animated sci-fi drama, that was just such an exciting thing to happen in animation for me.
Yeah.
And I do think it's a little bit of a shame that like that and some other great stuff is like, I don't know. I felt like we were on this precipice of like, I am happy in general with where adult animation is at. It feels like we're moving in a cool direction, but it felt like we were on the precipice of like some of these kinds of shows being able to really make an impact. And influence things into giving us more and more of these kinds of loftier, more ambitious, non-comedic adult animated shows.
Yep.
And then I think like partially because of corporate mergers and partially because of streaming bubbles bursting, a lot of that stuff got kind of cut off at the knees, which is a bummer.
Yeah, so I have a twofold follow-up question to that. One, because I totally agree with you, and I think that for a long time growing up, this is going to play into a question I have for you later. It's adult animation was defined by Simpsons and like South Park, and it was meant to either be subversive or specifically a comedy, even something that was designed for adults that was animated. You weren't meant to take seriously.
Right.
And I like that, similar to you, I like that we were leaving that. So I have a two-part question, which is one, how do you think we got to this precipice? And the shows that immediately come to mind for me are, we just talked about Pantheon, Common Side Effects, which is another Mike Judge joint that came out this year, which was fantastic. Scavengers Reign, which was 2 years ago.
About a year ago. A year and a half maybe, yeah.
Which was incredible. And what do you think brought us to this? I heard an argument, and I want to know your thoughts on it, that it was pandemic related. Like, we can't have people on set, so we're going to try and do this.
Well, there was definitely that. There was definitely a ton of animation being greenlit when when lockdown happened. Like, all of a sudden, there was just so much animation being greenlit, and a lot of it never came to fruition because once we got back in the studio, like people were like, well, we don't need the animation's expensive, we can make other shows now. But I think it's pandemic related in terms of like them greenlighting stuff. I do think even just thematically, like a lot of the stuff people were thinking about in lockdown and like the existential dread a lot of people felt is maybe influencing the subject matter of a lot of these shows.
That was the other part of this question, because I was wondering, because all those things I just listed were like, if you think about it, like existential is the word to describe them. It's a lot of like, hey, what's going on?
Yes. I mean, I think all of the ones you mentioned, although I guess Pantheon was maybe, I feel like Pantheon's writing maybe predated the pandemic. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's based off a series of short stories, I believe, that probably predated the pandemic. But it definitely, especially when you get into season 2, spoilers, one of the major threats is the main bad guy is going to create a pandemic. And you're like, I was like,
oh no.
And he's also going to use vaccines to do it. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how I feel about all this right now, watching this in 2025. I don't know how I feel about this.
They probably would not have written it that way post-pandemic. Common Side Effects especially is a very, very existential show, but even Scavengers Reign, which like is obviously a sci-fi show, but like it's very, very existential because of like that circumstance that they're all put in it's this dire circumstance that I think maybe the writers related to in how when they were writing it, through how they felt, going through a pandemic and, figuring out what's important to you and who you are and that kind of thing. Both of those, but I also think maybe the other thing though, that like, man, it's such a bummer because I feel like obviously this is actually now in the news with HBO Max being the name of Max again, which is insane. Yes. But when HBO Max hit, they did a really great job building a really cool library, and they were doing some really unique greenlighting. And granted, that is part of the streaming bubble. It's a lot of stuff getting greenlit that will, is not sustainable in the long run. But an exec over there who's in charge of adult animation named Billy Wee, who was greenlighting a lot of these more unique adult animated shows that had these more existential vibes and were branching outside of branching outside of comedy and raunchiness and violence in the adult animation. And so some of the shows that he greenlit were Fired on Mars, which was really unique, which was maybe a little more of a blend of a comedy and an existential adult animated show. It looked more like, your classic comedy, but that's a show about a guy who takes a job on Mars as a graphic designer at like a Mars startup and then gets fired, and there's no way for him to go back to Earth. So he's like, what is my life now?
That's a good setup.
It's a fun show. And then he also greenlit Scavengers Reign. Yep. And then he was a victim of the AT&T merger. So Zaslav comes in, he gets cut. But now I think one of the reasons you're seeing some of these things over at Netflix is he's over at Netflix now. So
wow.
He's the one who I think probably brought in Pantheon, knowing like this is unique and like no one's shown season 2 yet. Let's do it. He tried to bring Scavengers Reign over to give it a second chance.
Which is, I think it is on Netflix.
Yes.
It's probably too late now, but if you haven't watched it, go watch it. If we could get a season 2, I think season 1's perfect, but if we could get a season 2.
Yeah. He said that it sounds like it was an attempt to get a season 2, but it's, that's a really hard thing to do when it's someone else owns the show and you're bringing it to another network. And a lot of people have already seen it. So it doesn't feel super hopeful, but it is such a good show. But the other thing though, is I don't know if you realize this, cause I know, Common Side Effects is partially Mike Judge, but one of the co-creators of Scavengers Reign is the co-creator of Common Side Effects.
I heard about that.
So it's Joseph Bennett, who's a really, really awesome, unique, cool animator. And I think you can see like a lot of the threads, like they have very different character model styles, but the animation itself is actually kind of similar in like, obviously Common Side Effects is doing the more sort of psychedelic trip sequences, but then Scavengers Reign kind of has this crazy alien Rube Goldberg ecosystem that does a lot of other trippy stuff that's kind of reminiscent of one another.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. Part of me is hoping that Common Side Effects success will make them revisit Scavengers Reign.
Do we know how Common Side Effects is doing? I believe it's getting a second season.
It seems like it's done well. It feels like it's gotten a lot of attention online. It definitely has a second season coming. I was kind of shocked by how many people I saw talking about it. I was planning on making I usually, when a cool show comes out that I love and really want to show people, I try to make a video that's like, hey, I'm begging you to check this new show out. But that show felt like it had so much support that I was like, oh, I don't think I need to. I think like this show has so much love that I'll just make something before season 2 and hype it up then to see if we can get more after that. Yeah.
Well, and it's such a disappointment too, because just when I brought up Common Side Effects, what's above the title? It says Adult Swim,
right?
And it's one of those things that, with everything going on with Warner Brothers, it seems a lack of understanding of what you have, and it's like, you have Adult Swim. Let Adult Swim cook. You know what I mean? Like they've proven that they can. Same with HBO. Just let HBO, which I think they are with They're just letting HBO do its thing. But it's like do that same thing, because I think I felt like, and this is all vibes based. I don't know if I've seen anything behind it, but they had not Beware the Batman. It was Batman Caped Crusader, which they sold off instead of them
having it on Amazon Prime. Yeah,
it's on Amazon Prime. And then they were going to get rid of My Adventures with Superman, and they went to Adult Swim. And my impression was like, okay, so they're going to punt this out and let it die. But it was a big enough hit that now it's getting a season 3. There's a spinoff, My Adventures with Green Lantern, which is great because the show's. I really like My Adventures with Superman. I think it's really good.
It's fun. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool, a real good introduction to people. Like my son's too young now, but I could see my son like watching it and being really into it.
Totally.
And so it's just like, Adult Swim's a proven quantity. Let them do whatever. Let them do it. Whatever they're doing, let them do it.
It is strange that they felt like they should come in and be like, well, this stuff you've been doing for years successfully, we're going to change all of it. We're going to get rid of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
So we have a question from the Discord from Silver Black. Is there a demand for adult animation or animation in general for older audiences? While Invincible is popular, most serialized adult animation seems to have problems not being canceled. Is there a demand for more adult-oriented animation stories, or is that wishful thinking? And I think I'm glad they brought up Invincible because I watched the first season of Invincible and I liked it. But it does have a little bit more of that vibe that we're talking about, where like we need to like prove how adult we are.
Totally.
Like,
it's,
you know what I mean?
It's like, so like I really love Invincible, but there are at least 3 times a season where I'm like, oh, this was more violent than I needed it to be.
Yeah, I remember like in the end of season 1 with the fight with Omni-Man and Invincible in the train, and I was like, okay, so are you trying to tell me how gross this is or how cool you think this is? Because I feel like the wires are getting crossed a little bit.
Right, for sure. And I think sometimes they intentionally cross those wires because they know some fans want to see the cool shit, and some fans are like, this is crazy that they're going there,
Yeah.
And so but yeah, like I do think Invincible success is a huge deal. Like that is gotta be historically one of the most successful non-comedic adult animated shows. Like, I mean, maybe you might even be able to argue it's the number 1 most successful. I can't really think of any that were more successful. And so like, I'm happy that I like Invincible a lot, and I'm very happy that is doing as well as it is. But I do think shows like Common Side Effects are the ones that are going to push the content into, although Common Side Effects does have some quite a bit of violence as well. But I think pushing into headier, more unique adult concepts that are, not just like superheroes, but violent, So, and there are some other pretty cool, like Netflix. Did you see Carol and the End of the World?
No.
That is, it looks like your typical adult animated show. It's not like it's doing anything unique in its art style, but it's a really interesting adult animated show that is just about, there's like this anomaly in the sky and the world is set to end within like 3 months. And it's just about what everyone decides to do with their time while waiting for the world to end.
Wow.
And this woman, Carol, is such a unique protagonist because she's not your typical protagonist. She's very reserved and quiet, and her like initial instinct is, I'm going to go get a job at an office so I have structure. And she just like works at an office.
Yeah. When the question to ask about demand, I think part of it is, and I don't know that studios have really cracked this in the streaming era, is their part of their job is to create that demand, or at least let people like me know what's out there. Because when it comes to this stuff, like I think I was aware of Common Side Effects because Sam, my friend Sam, who co-created Almost Super Answers with me, sent me a clip. It was the opening clip of when the 2 main characters meet and you see the FBI agents like dancing the song. And I saw that clip and I was like, I showed it to my wife. I was like, this is everything I want to do because it's funny, but also it's touching on like real things, and it's kind of trippy, and it's like existential, and it's like, this is, if I could bottle this type of stuff I want to create, it would look like this. And that got me to check out the show. But otherwise it's like Primal, because I know Gendy Tartakovsky's name. Primal's fantastic. Anybody, I think that's still on HBO Max. Go check that shit out. It's incredible. I guess they're talking about bringing back season 3, but have it be more of an anthology. Don't know how I feel about that, but
I mean, I think I'm more into that than them somehow trying to continue it.
But so it's like, it's kind of the same way I pick up comics. Is it like a creator I recognize? Cool, I'll check their shit out. And so I think this is true across streaming, where there might be a show that is the exact right show for you that you just don't know exists, especially with the Netflix model. If we're going to shotgun out like the entire season of a show on a weekend.
Oh, hate it.
Good luck finding it,
I also think, to that point, that like there might not be an immediate demand for it, but I think that's also largely to do with people's perceptions of animation, like and perceptions of what adult animation can be. So like if people don't know the kinds of places adult animation can go and the kinds of stories they can tell, then why would there be a demand for it? You know what I mean? Like, I think if some of these other shows that are now getting a little popular can do anything. It's to kind of help people see and understand that there's not really limits to animation. You know, it's like, it's a medium, not a genre. And so we shouldn't expect adult animation to just be your, family comedy sitcom. And I do think we are starting to get a variety. And I do also think some of these shows have sort of Trojan horsed a little bit of some bigger ideas. Like one of my favorite shows is BoJack Horseman, which is sure an adult animated comedy, and it's largely satire built around Hollywood, but it really deals with some like very heavy emotional stuff in, I think, a very mature way. And I think that show was one that a lot of people watched expecting a funny horse gets drunk, and by the end of the show they're like, oh no, BoJack's drinking again, and so I think there's something really cool to say about shows like that are introducing some of these ideas through what someone expects is a different kind of show. And the creator of BoJack's got a show coming out in adult or on Netflix later this year called Long Story Short that sounds pretty cool and experimental in its formatting, and I'm hoping is like a little bit more of an emotional and mature like family show versus your typical raunchy comedy, which is what I expect from him. So
and it's interesting too. I think there's something to be said that perhaps because in Western culture, animation, you have to make your argument for animation more, and also in the very nature of animation is every detail is a choice because there's somebody who had to create it. That there can be a little bit more purposefulness in the decisions that are made. I'm going to use, for example, this is not, I use this as an example as a perfect all ages show. And by all ages, I mean like not for kids. I mean like literally you could be of any age and get something out of it. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Totally.
Because there are so many times when I'm trying to make an argument for what something else should do. And I'm like, what's a good example of what I'm talking about? Avatar: The Last Airbender. He's like, you know what Star Wars should have done for episodes 7, 8, 9? They should have done what Legend of Korra did. You know what I mean? Like Legend of Korra doesn't rehash the conflicts of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a new Aang did it. Aang, the Aang gang saved the day. That conflict's done. You know what I mean? But and not just that. It's like they did good. They did a good job with that. And as we talk about, you're talking about the themes that BoJack Horseman's able to tap into. I think there is something there to me about the beauty of animation in that every movement has to be a choice. So you're really thinking about it. I also think about Adventure Time, which is meant for kids. But especially once you get into those deeper seasons, they're like unpacking stuff. And I also think animation lends itself to thinking, maybe animators are just weirder dudes and gals. They're like, what about this thing now? I did want to, on Invincible, pivot off Invincible a little bit. Do you think superhero media might be a good way, talking about Trojan horsing stuff, more adult animation to people? Because when you were talking about that, you got me thinking about Creature Commandos.
Oh, sure. I haven't watched it yet.
It's good. It's a weird like opening salvo to the new DCU because
it's a weird first project.
Tonally it's pretty bleak. And so I'm glad that James Gunn Superman looks really like nailed it. Because if I was just going off Creature Commandos, like I'm worried about this guy doing Superman. But what it got me thinking about is like these big brands. They should be more. Marvel should be more open to this. Like I really liked She-Hulk. It probably would have been cost.
People really hate that show, but it's fun.
I know. But it would have probably cost them less money and maybe been better for them if it had been animated.
True.
And I wonder if maybe with Invincible and Creature Commandos, I wonder if you think maybe those types of things will allow, because obviously superhero media has a long history in animation. Maybe that's a good foot in the door for more adult animated stuff.
I think it's a good thought for sure, especially like with the success of something like X-Men 97, which obviously that's a nostalgic thing, but that is, MCU adjacent, really popular animated show. And, I wouldn't say it's an adult show, but the X-Men is never dealing with, it's always dealing with some pretty heavy ideas,
Yes.
And so, so I do think that would be cool. And especially, like right now, maybe doesn't feel like the time just because people are already a little like picky and choosy with with their MCU media, right? Like it feels like they've fallen off people's goodwill list a little bit, so people aren't just willing to pick up whatever new thing is happening. But like I think if you choose a cool character and a beloved character and make a cool adult animated show, like honestly, I mean, I know everyone loves their live action iteration, but like a good character for that would be like Daredevil. Daredevil could be an amazing adult animated show, you know? But I do think that could be a good jumping off point. Maybe we'll see that more with James Gunn's DCU.
Well, especially since it's part of the DNA right off the bat. Like he said, like we know Rick Flag is going to be showing up in both Peacemaker and Superman, and it's the same actor, Frank Grillo, playing him in both. And so it's baked into the Blue Beetle. The Blue Beetle movie is getting a follow-up and as an animated series. And it all counts within the continuity. And so granted, it's not exactly what we're talking about. But it might be a good one. I think there's an argument to be made that superheroes lend themselves to animation better than live action. So that might just be a way to start ingratiating people to that. Another question from the Discord, Jake Hefner. What do you think makes for good adult animation that doesn't require over-the-top violence or explicit themes?
You know, that's a good question, because I am like, even though this whole conversation has been largely about where can an adult animation go, I still do like adult animated sitcoms, you know, like I am still a fan of that stuff.
We're not saying get rid of it. We're not saying get rid of it.
Yes. Yeah. And we're not going to, because Fox just greenlit, they just got American Dad back and greenlit Simpsons, Family Guy, and Bob's Burgers for like 4 additional seasons. It's like a crazy renewal. We're never going to lose those shows. But
what would it take to lose? I was like, are there cast members that have passed away using Simpsons, or is it just going to go to the heat death of the universe?
I think there's some cast members that you lose, you can't keep going, and I feel like this renewal will bring them to season 40. It feels like you wrap it up. You wrap it up there, you know. Yeah. But back to the question. I think kind of the cool thing though is that like for me, it's mostly just like, what excites me now is just things I haven't seen in adult animation. It's not necessarily any one thing, because the cool thing about adult animation and any animation is that, you know, like I said, it's a medium, not a genre. You can explore any kind of story within animation. And so when I see an animated show that's covering a genre or style of story or tone that I've never seen adult animation do before, that's what excites me most. And ultimately, I think like it's really all up to your personal taste, right? You know, like people aren't going to love everything that comes out of animation, but people aren't going to love every drama show that hits Netflix or hits HBO Max. You know, it's largely up to taste. So personally, I don't know if there's any one thing. I just want to see them continue to experiment and branch into new areas.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with that. And I want to get to a point where my regular co-host on with Spencer's Roxy has a thing where she's just like, I just can't get into animated shows. And I'd like that to go away. You know what I mean? I'd like that to be like where it is what you're talking about, are the themes and the ideas and stuff. It doesn't matter whether it's live action or animated, and get to a point where when people are talking about working on this stuff, there's a real conversation of like, should this be an animated project? Should this be, is this story better? Will it be better served? Because I think a lot of the shows we're talking about benefit definitely from animation, but you think about common side effects, there's nothing really preventing it from being live action.
True.
Even the trippy stuff you could probably get away with in live action, but the style is so distinct. And that's the other thing. So many times as a comic reader, a perfect example right out of the gate, Sweet Tooth. You'll see a comic and they're like, we're going to adapt it in live action. It's like, then you're cutting away half of what makes this interesting. Right. Because part of what makes Sweet Tooth interesting is Jeff Lemire's art style. Yeah. So, and I wish instead of thinking like live action, I think actually when I was reading Sweet Tooth, I'm like, the way to adapt this is stop motion animation. Because that is, it would capture what makes that art interesting. nobody's going to make a stop motion animated show, but it would be cool
No,
if
it's too
Netflix could. Netflix could. If anybody could get away with it, it would be Netflix. And I would have watched that shit. I would have. Right. I don't think I saw one episode of Sweet Tooth, but if you made it a stop motion animated show, I'm watching it. One of my favorite comics of all time that they've been circling, adapting a bunch is 100 Bullets, which is written by Brian Azzarello and illustrated by Eduardo Risso. Eduardo Risso's art for that book is such a distinct part of setting the tone of it.
Right.
That it's like, it should be animated. That if you're going to adapt it, it should be an animated show.
Right. I've dipping back into Invincible, I was so happy that they opted to do that show animated.
Yes.
And obviously Kirkman is like a comic book giant, and with especially moving into TV with The Walking Dead being such a hit. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, The Walking Dead had such a good art style too. And I'm like, man, maybe that show would have been cool if it had been animated, Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I was reading, I've been rereading. Have you read Harrow County?
No.
The artist is Tyler Crook, and his art style is so cool. And there was, I guess, talk of them adapting that into a live action show. And I kept being like, wait, this has got to be, you got to animate this show. You can't do this live action.
It's like Hellboy. Why do we keep doing live action Hellboys? Look at Mike Mignola's work. Hellboy's cool. Part of it is Mike Mignola's the style there. It's like, what are we doing? Why do we keep doing this? Last question from the Discord. Handsome Ransom asks, what are some shows that you think would do well as adult animation as well? Severance season 1 felt very much like an Adult Swim, but made it to live action, in my opinion. An animated version of Always Sunny in Philadelphia has always been a dream of mine since I was a youngster.
That's really interesting. Severance is a cool answer. I mean, I love Severance, and I'm pretty much just on board with that being how it is. But we got some
stop motion in Severance. We got season 2. We got a little stop motion in Severance.
True. Yeah. I would not, but I would not hate to see the alternate universe where that is an animated show. Dip in and be like, what's it like over here? Yeah. That's a good question, though. I often find myself watching stuff and just being like, thinking, what if this was animated? Would this be cooler if this were animated? Yeah.
Well, to your point, like, I think there's no reason that something like Breaking Bad was great. But it's one of those, like, you could do a Breaking Bad and it could be animated, and that would add an interesting texture to it. There's not a lot of stuff that I think demands to be live action. I'm trying to think. That is a good question. What's something I'm watching right now that could be animated?
You know what? I've said this a lot of times, and obviously this is only a pitch in the universe where J.K. Rowling is not horrible.
Yeah.
But when they decided to redo Harry Potter, I'm like, well, for all those same reasons we mentioned, where the iconography is going to be overwhelmingly related to the movies, why don't you do an animated version of that? Where you can, I think that creating that world in animation, I think that's the kind of thing that I would like to see done more, is something where the world is so fantastic that I'm like, well, we're probably going to get something more visually appealing if we are exploring this through animation. I know they just did that Lord of the Rings animated movie, which visually looked cool. I've heard kind of mixed things about the story in it, but
that's the thing, is like, I just don't care about any Lord of the Rings thing outside of like the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit.
Yeah,
I haven't even watched those Hobbit movies. I'm like, this shouldn't be a
I did it a few years
trilogy.
Ago.
Yeah.
They're not great. There is probably one good movie within those 3 movies.
Yeah, you could do a super cut of those 3 movies together. Do the Phantom Menace. What was Topher Grace's Phantom Menace cut?
Right. I think he also did a Hobbit cut himself.
Yeah, great, good. I think for me, and this is not as interesting an answer as something like Severance, which I agree I think Severance is perfect the way it is, but it could also make a good animated show. It's I think specifically Disney of all places needs to be more open to, for its big IP stuff, what animation can do for them. So and I specifically think of, I use She-Hulk as an example. The other example, which I think got a lot of hate similar to the way She-Hulk did, was The Acolyte. It's like, do Green Lantern season 2, but have it pick one of the anime studios that worked for Visions and have them do an Acolyte follow-up, because I think that'll do 2 things. One, I think the crowd that likes The Acolyte will be open to an anime Star Wars, which we're getting. I think it's like one of the shorts for Visions, I think it was the Ninth Jedi or something, is getting a series.
A show? Oh, yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. Know that. Yeah. So I think that's good. I think that's the right call. I think that audience would be open to that. And two, I think the audience that is like, I would need Star Wars is for white boys. Those guys probably wouldn't watch it. And therefore they would just, they're not part of that conversation. You would just avoid that toxicity entirely. Same with She-Hulk. It's like, yeah, make it an animated show. And I think you cleave off a huge section of the toxic fandom and allow the people that might be more open to this thing to enjoy it. And so I think they should be more open to that.
I am kind of shocked that no one's like that they haven't looked at the success and overwhelming positive reaction to the Spider-Verse movies and not considered like,
an animated,
maybe.
an animated, 1000%. Granted, it takes a lot of work to make those Spider-Verse movies so good. You can't just poop them out like they try to do their other movies. But I think you're 100% right, and that's what I'm hopeful about. James Gunn has said a lot. We'll see if it pans out. But James Gunn has said a lot of stuff that I like and agree with. When he's like, we're not going to greenlight a movie till we've got a script. I'm like, the way movies used to be made. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right.
MCU is shooting the movie before the script's done.
We're hearing that with Doomsday right now. They're like, some of the Thunderbolts cast are like, I know we're like 2 months into shooting, but we haven't seen a script. And it's like, what are we doing? And stuff like, we're going to do these if it lends itself to animation, it's going to be animated, but it's still in the continuity. I'm like, what is it? 2 movies, 2 shows a year. He's saying all the right stuff. Hopefully it pans out.
They should do Gunn should greenlight a stylized Batman Beyond movie animated.
Yes. 1000%. Well, because you're probably saying that because the team that did Spider-Verse originally pitched a Batman Beyond movie.
The team? Yeah, I knew there was a pitch for one, but I didn't know it was the same.
My understanding was the Spider-Verse team, before they did Spider-Verse, they pitched a Batman Beyond movie to Warner Brothers, who passed. And I'm like, that's stupid. That's what a stupid thing to do. Because that movie would rip and be really good. I hope. One of the guys that did, I think there was 3 directors on Spider-Verse 2, Joaquin Dos Santos.
Yes.
Worked on Korra, worked on Justice League Unlimited.
He's a huge action animation director. He was did a ton of Justice League animated show.
If you're watching any Justice League episode of Justice League Unlimited and you're like, wow, this fight is incredible, it's probably a Joaquin Dos Santos episode. I think he did the Question Green Arrow one, which is one of my favorites. But to that point, like, you call Genndy Tartakovsky up and be like, I know he did, his movies are the Hotel Transylvania ones, but Primal's great. See if it's like, hey man, do you want to do pick somebody?
Right.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up, but I did want to ask you, one, do you enjoy the animes? And if you do enjoy the animes, I'm wondering if we're still, because part of what spurs this conversation for me is, it seems like Japan does not have the hangups about animation we have. They're like, hey, do you want a show about 2 girls that are tennis pros, but they also like to make out? Guess what? Totally. We've got one for you. And it's like, this is the right instinct. Why are we so stuck up about what animation has to be over here?
Frankly, they definitely do have the better instinct, and they definitely don't have those hangups. I am not as deep into the anime world, mostly because I am a little overwhelmed in where to start. There's just so many, and so many of the shows have 1,000 episodes.
When people are like, we had I believe he's still in our audience, but we had a patron that was always like, you guys should watch One Piece. I'm like, I'm sorry, bro, that shit ain't happening. It's got 1,000 episodes.
Like my cousins all watched through it. My brother just started it. I'm like, maybe I have to just try. Maybe I just have to give it a shot.
It was the same thing. We had audience members that were like, you guys got to watch Supernatural. That's 15 episodes of 15 seasons, 25 episodes each, and they're all episodes 45 minutes. That shit's not happening. It's not happening.
So I'm trying to find I want to find a few animated or anime shows that like are manageable, that I can like really start sinking my teeth into the anime world. I am very into anime movies, you know, more so the ones that are more well known. But I like, my dog's name is Ponyo. Like I love Miyazaki.
Yeah.
I love Satoshi Kon. I love his films.
Fun fact: Satoshi Kon is the part of the inspiration for the name of the main character in Danger Boy, Satoshi Santos.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, good inspiration. So I think I'm gonna watch his anime, which is called Paranoia Agent.
It's great.
Okay. Great.
I'm not similar to you. A lot of times I dabble occasionally in anime. But I think that might have been the first thing of his I saw, and it's
nice.
Paranoia Agent is great.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I do this thing with directors I love where I save some of their work so that I don't run out. And with Satoshi Kon being deceased, I'm like, well, once I haven't watched Millennium Actress and I haven't watched Paranoia Agent. Once I watch those, I'm like, and then I'm done. I'm done with this stuff. But I think I just need to pull the trigger and like go for it, because I've heard that's so great.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, what's the guy who did Your Name, Mirai?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Films.
Yeah.
So I like the anime world, and I really like, there's some stuff in it that I adore, but it is like a place that I need to dip my toes into a little more thoroughly. Yeah.
That's another thing I like, that my adventures with Superman, pulling from that world, even though that wouldn't be the choice I would make. What I think is great about it is that to me, from an outsider, and in comments, you guys can let us know if you're a big anime fan. If you're like, actually, here are the problems with anime. From an outsider's perspective, one of the things I like about it is they do not seem afraid to innovate. They're like, how about a show with a guy with a chainsaw for a head? Fuck it. Like, and it's like, this instinct we could use more in Western media, where it's like, this show is going to exist for 12 episodes, and then we're going to throw it in the trash and make something completely new. Like that's cool. That's from the outsider's perspective. That seems, it's either that or you're One Piece and Dragon Ball, and it's like, this will never go away. We'll never get rid of this.
Yep.
Yeah. So interesting. For speaking of dabbling, the guy that made Cowboy Bebop has a new show called Lazarus that is also on HBO Max.
I've been meaning to check it out. I've heard it's great.
It's really good. There's I'm not completely caught up. In a couple episodes, they start like dabbling with like trans issues, and it's like, what are we? Which I think is good. Going? But the perspective is like, what stance are we taking on this stuff? How does Japan feel about this stuff? And so far it seems okay. I'd be interested to know any trans fans who are watching it, how they feel about it. But obviously that's not a main thing on the show. It's just the past couple episodes have done like bits around it. I'm like, all right, I'm keeping an eye on you. I'm keeping an eye on you, Lazarus. But it's beautifully animated. My understanding is the fight choreographer for John Wick worked on it to choreograph their action scenes.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so
what a tag team! What a team up! Crazy.
If you're the guy that created Cowboy Bebop, I get the impression that you can call whoever the hell you want and be like, "Hey, you want to work on my thing?" Also, I know any John Wick fans out there, like I am. The part of the main backstory is John Wick did this impossible feat that we've only talked about and alluded to. They're going to make an animated movie that shows what happened, and I'm like, that is the right call. That's a good. Because with as much as you hyped it up, it's like, animate it, make it as crazy as possible.
I like that universe for an animated adaptation. That's fun. Yeah.
Yes. So before we wrap up, I mean, those were kind of the questions I wanted to ask you. Were there any other final thoughts on the state of adult animation? Anything you wanted to say about adult animation before we go?
Mostly just like, I don't know if any of the shows I mentioned strike your fancy, like check them out. And like, I just want to implore people to be willing to check out some of these different animated shows. And also I think it would be really helpful to like talk about them on social media, wherever you can, tell your friends about them, just like get the word out about some of these things. Like Common Side Effects had a really nice word of mouth campaign. It seems like it's really paid off. I really wish that had worked for stuff like Scavengers Reign or, or Fired on Mars. And so I just want to say, be open to what like animation can be, and And if you got anyone who in your life who's trying to tell you that animation is just for kids, like show them Scavengers Reign, show them Invincible, show them something that will help them see like the possibilities of animation. Because I love the medium so much, and it does pain me whenever someone even just makes an implicit comment that like animation's for kids. I'm just like, man, there's so like it's a medium, there's so much we can do here.
There's so
it's
many
like
different...
saying TV is for kids.
Exactly.
Well, some of it,
it can be, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think there's a lot of you think about like Pixar. I mentioned Avatar earlier, but you think about Pixar and their ability to make something that's accessible to everyone.
Totally
is great, but like you're saying, there's just so many different avenues to tell stories. I think if you like stories in general, here's where I'm going to land on this. I think inclusivity across the board makes your life richer not even just as a person, although I think that's true too, but just as a consumer. You're able to experience more, see different perspectives, and get more out of it. So just be open up to that stuff. See what strikes your fancy. Johnny, if people want more deep, thoughtful insight into this medium, where can they find your channel?
You can find me, Johnny Two Cellos, on YouTube. Also, Johnny Two Casual, which is a new endeavor where it's a little more off the cuff, a little more closer to what we're doing here today. So check both of those out. And I do tend to talk a lot about adult animated comedies over there. That tends to be the niche that like does very well for me. But I'm always trying to hype up any of the new shows that are branching into new territory. So yeah.
Check that out. If you're here, you're checking out my personal channel, DJ Talks Trash. This is my show, Trash Talk, that I'm trying to do more of. The previous episode, I was talking to Andrew Sage about anarchism. Before that, I was talking with Elliot Morgan about philosophy and how to talk about that stuff online. So please check those out. I also do a show on this channel called Krypton Academy with Sal, where we're going through the Superman movies. And we're now at the Snyder era. We just did Man of Steel. Johnny, you'll be shocked to find out that the Man of Steel episode is our best hitting one so far. We'll see where we go. Next up was Batman v Superman.
BVS, are you guys going to do Ultimate Edition?
I think I'm not going to tell Sal to do that. I think I am going to, because it is better.
It is better. I think it's better.
It is better. I'm not one of the people that thinks the Snyder cut of Justice League is better because it's 4 hours. And I'm a big brevity is the soul of wit guy. Like, just tighten it up. But BVS legit, no, it is better. So I think I'm going to watch that, but I'm not going to force Sal to watch that because I don't know how much longer it is.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like a extra 30 minutes, and it's already a close to a 3-hour movie. So yeah.
Zack Snyder needs to just learn how to just tighten it up. Figure out how to tighten it up. It kills the editor in me. It's like you could cut this. You could cut this out. And the movie doesn't need it.
If the Snyder cut had been his original cut for the theaters, it would not have been 4 hours.
No. And I'm not necessarily, again, like a 3-hour one. I just actually don't think the extra 2 hours actually improves it that much. But whatever, that's a me thing. I don't need to be yelled at on this video that's not related to that. Point is, if you want to check out Sal and I will not, I think he and I both decided like, we're going to watch the Whedon cut of Justice League because we have lives to live for Krypton Academy. But hey, man, I guess maybe if that shit gets enough views, maybe we'll do the Snyder cut. We'll see. But anyway, we're doing that all in the lead up to the new Superman. If you want to hear all our takes on that, check it out. Check that stuff out. If you want to more exclusive shows like Spider-Versity, if you want to hear Johnny's drop by just to talk about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, that's the one. You can check that over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. You can find me on Blue Sky at DJ Talks Trash. Ooh, and Danger Boy. I mentioned it before. DangerBoyComic.com. Click on that pre-order store link. It would also make a good animated show if anybody knows anybody that wants something cool, whatever. Just saying. Thank you all for watching us. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.